I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents. Meet a man who started out delivering pizza and is now delivering education. Leading Catholic philanthropist Thomas Monaghan pays us a visit.
I read a book by C.S. Lewis called Mere Christianity, and it had a chapter on pride. A short chapter, but it hit me right between the eyes.
Plus, education may be the answer to addressing poverty. We'll tell you how.
Young people and families are having a great deal of trouble affording tutoring, but our ministry is to provide those things for free.
And it's changed lives. John Paul's Theology of the Body. We'll hear how. Well, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Matt McClure has the night off. Well, he is probably best known as the founder of Domino's Pizza. It started with just one pizzeria, which Thomas Monaghan turned into the #1 pizza delivery chain with more than 6,000 locations. He also owned the Detroit Tigers baseball team, and today it's estimated that Monaghan is worth almost $500 million with a B dollars, all of which he has pledged to give away. He's dedicating much of his time and his money to Catholic education as well, founding Ave Maria University, one of the most respected Catholic schools near Naples, Florida. And Thomas Monaghan was in New York recently, and I had the chance to talk with him about his life and his work. Tom, it is so great to welcome you to our Current Studios. Thanks for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, we talked a little while ago, and now we have a chance to meet in person and have a more in-depth conversation, which is great. And one of the things that I'm fascinated by is your background. You're known, obviously, for starting Domino's Pizza, and you made a lot of money that way. And then you chose to pledge to give it away as well, all this money that you've made. First of all, talk to me a little bit about what it was like to run a business and how being Catholic may have influenced that. Does Catholic teaching have a place in business?
Well, I think it does. I've been asked many times, how can you square being Catholic, being a good Catholic, and being a successful businessman? And that always surprised me, because I thought that being a good Catholic helped being a successful in business. And I've never seen a conflict. Certainly not in the long run. Maybe once in a while a short-term a sacrifice, but not in the long run.
How did you, maybe be specific, any particular things that you think from the Catholic teaching were helpful in business, moral codes of conduct or ways of doing business practices that were more beneficial?
Well, one thing would be television advertising. We had $100 and some million worth of television advertising a year, and we would not put our advertising on a show that was anti-family, anti-religion, or anything like that. And so we're pretty limited to what shows we could be. We had a lot of sports.
Right. Yeah. Well, you were involved in sports, obviously. You owned a team, you owned jets, you had the homes, the cars, everything that money can buy, really. And then you elected to get rid of it. What was the reasoning behind that? What within you made you no longer want to have those accoutrements?
Well, the first question I asked myself is, why did I get so obsessed with all those things? Because I just was collecting every kind of toy you could have, and it's almost like it's fun pursuing it, and when you get it, you forget about it. And pretty soon you have so many things that you can't keep track of them, and let alone enjoy them or use them. A lot of times I did things that I justified it was for the business, like when I had a large car collection. I was in the delivery business, so I thought there was a connection there that I could exploit. But I read a book by C.S. Lewis called Mere Christianity, and it had a chapter on pride. A short chapter, but it hit me right between the eyes. And I thought he was writing it to me, because why was I trying to be so successful, being so rich, having so many things? And it was basically to impress people, to have more than other people. And I don't like a show-off. And it turned out I was probably the biggest one of all. And I couldn't sleep that night. And I thought about my youth when I was a kid in the orphanage. Loved sports. I went out of the way to make a spectacular play, risking my body. Why did I do that? To get a compliment. and then later on, and when I got married and started building the business, I lived in little trailers. I drove old cars, ragged clothes. I did that so I could have more later. Have less now to give me more later. Well, more what? More than other people. And I didn't like that. So I took what I call a millionaire's vow of poverty, and I basically got rid of all the ostentatious luxuries. I didn't give up conveniences because I do have a wife.
Right.
But I gave up
yes, we
ostentatious.
women are demanding.
Yeah, well, she had a Cadillac and a Jaguar, and I got rid of my Bentleys and Rolls and everything. And I said, honey, you think you ought to get rid of that and maybe get a Buick or a Chevy?
Sure.
She said, you took the vow, I didn't.
Right. I agreed to marry you, not take the vow of poverty. Right. Yeah. Well, that's interesting because, you touched on a couple things. You took the vow of poverty, so that means you're giving back. And you pledged to give back as part of this. Well, you renewed your pledge, I should say, to give your money away. And a lot of it, obviously, is in your university, Ave Maria, down in Florida. Talk to us about what's going on there.
Well, Ave Maria University is an attempt to be a beacon for what Catholic education should be. I've been on the board of 5 Catholic colleges and universities, and some better than others, and I'm shocked to discover that Catholic colleges and universities today are the worst place you want to send your kids to if you want them to keep their faith. You're better off sending them to a non-Catholic school. And there's a lot of research that shows that. There's something recently, there was a study of Catholic co-eds, and the ones that went to Catholic schools were 4 times as likely to hook up, 3.97 times as likely to hook up in casual sex than if they went to a non-Catholic school.
Interesting.
I mean, that's shocking, but that's what's...
So you wanted to influence not only the teachers and have a new generation of teachers available, but you also wanted to influence the student body and have a place for them to go where they felt perhaps it could be more in line with their Catholic faith. Yeah,
basically they can relax spiritually at Ave Maria. You know, someone said, gee, it's not uncool to be religious here. Our #1 club on campus is the Pro-Life Club. The #2 club is the Chastity Club, and that was started by the students.
Recently I was reading something by the Sisters of Mercy. I guess they have a couple of Catholic universities where they have these unwed mother programs. Is that something that you would ever even consider doing at Ave Maria, or is that something that you think is probably best left to other schools?
That's something that might be appealing to us.
Okay, yeah, it's an interesting concept. It's just something that a few places
The first
are
thing
doing.
is just to make sure that our theology that we teach is in line with the teachings of the Catholic Church. Because that's unfortunately pretty rare in Catholic schools.
Right. And what is your daily practice of Catholicism? Because a lot of people will look at someone like you and they will, really sort of see a mentor and they want to look up to you and wonder what it is that you do on a daily basis.
Well, I go to Mass every day. I say at least 5 rosaries. It's not a big sacrifice because I do it when I'm working out on the Stairmaster. And I read a short version of the Divine Office, the morning and evening prayers. I try to take care of myself physically, which I think is a spiritual thing. I've been near my ideal weight for the last 20-some years.
That's great.
And I try to be humble. And I work at that all the time. And I go to confession. I try to go every week. I try to constantly stay in the state of sanctifying grace. That's my #1 goal in my entire adult life, is to stay in the state of sanctifying grace and never, ever commit a mortal sin. And I pray every day that I don't succumb to that. To me, that's one of the most important things in my life, and that's purely selfish. I don't want to go to hell.
Well, yeah, heaven sounds a lot better, doesn't it?
And it's forever.
It is indeed. Tom, that is unfortunately all we have time for today. Obviously, I knew the time was going to fly by, but it's fascinating to talk to you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join us on Currents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Thomas Monaghan there. And on the subject of Catholic education, Pope Benedict's general prayer intention for October is for Catholic universities, that they be places where it is possible to experience unity between faith and reason. Well, stay tuned. There's much more current straight ahead. When we return, we'll have the day's headlines, including
a plea for mercy from the Vatican for one of Saddam Hussein's closest aides. Welcome back to Currents. Coming up later, attacking poverty with education. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. A plea for mercy from the Vatican for a member of Saddam Hussein's regime. We get details from Rome Reports.
The Vatican has come out against a death sentence ordered for a former Hussein aide, Tariq Aziz. He was prosecuted by an Iraqi court for committing crimes against rival Shiite political parties. The Vatican has stated that it will petition Iraqi authorities not to execute him. Mr. Aziz is a Christian from the Chaldean sect and met with the late John Paul II shortly before the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. He quickly surrendered to American forces after the fall of Baghdad. Lawyers for Mr. Aziz have claimed that he was only responsible for Iraq's diplomatic and political affairs. No date has yet been set for the execution, but his lawyers are expected to appeal.
The Vatican spokesman said that the position of the Church on the death penalty is known. He added that it is hoped the execution will not take place in favor of reconciliation and reconstruction of peace and justice in Iraq. And Pope Benedict is sending his prayers and calling on the international community to help tsunami victims in Indonesia and flood victims in the West African country of Benin. At least 300 people were killed and more than 400 are missing following a magnitude 7.7 earthquake and the subsequent tsunami that struck off Indonesia. Aid workers say it has been difficult trying to reach people in the more remote areas. At least one team had to turn back because of high tide. Meanwhile, Benin has been hit with twice the normal amount of rainfall, displacing 200,000 people and affecting 600,000 more. From the Dominican Republic, the Cardinal Archbishop of Santo Domingo has called on the World Health Organization to help stop the cholera outbreak in neighboring Haiti. He also urged the people of his country to show solidarity with their neighbors in Haiti. Back in the U.S., Catholic Charities is among a number of groups reminding people of the still urgent need in the Gulf Coast. The organization has assisted more than 35,000 people with food vouchers, counseling, and financial assistance. They say that even though the oil has stopped flowing, many families are still hurting. A branch of the U.S. Bishops' Conference says it has adopted stronger policies to control where its money is used. The Catholic Campaign for Human Development, which works to fight poverty, had been under criticism in recent years over claims it worked with coalitions whose positions are contrary to those of the Catholic Church. Back in New York, St. Matthias Parish in Ridgewood is now part of a new historic district in Queens. The Landmarks Preservation Commission approved the district in southern Ridgewood on Tuesday. 4 buildings in that area, including the second oldest Episcopal church in New York, were also given landmark status. And finally, some nuns in Baltimore are hoping to hit a home run, courtesy of a prized baseball card. The School Sisters of Notre Dame are auctioning a rare century-old Honus Wagner card. A near mint condition card sold for close to $3 million back in 2007. The nun's card is in poor condition, but is expected to take in between $150,000 and $200,000. A brother of a nun left the card to the sisters when he died earlier this year. Well, stay tuned. There's much more current straight ahead. Just ahead, a new book takes a new look at love and marriage. Welcome back. Well, one of the best known and most misunderstood teachings of Pope John Paul is the theology of the body, a series of talks about marriage, sex, and personhood. A new book is trying to shed some light on that teaching and how it has changed lives. It's called Set Free to Love, and recently I had a chance to talk by phone with the author, Marcel Lejeune, a Catholic campus minister from Texas. Marcel, thanks so much for joining us today on Currents. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Francesca.
Well, I read your book this weekend. It is Set Free to Love, and it's on the theology of the body. And for people who don't know about it, it can be, I think, a little bit of a confusing topic at first, but you're here to clarify that. First of all, tell us, why did you write this book?
Well, I wrote this book for a couple of reasons. One of them is because the book is about stories of people who have read and learned and lived out the theology of the body, and it's changed their lives and some of the radical transformations. And I think that the theology of the body is a great teaching, but a lot of people have difficulty getting into it or understanding it because it's pretty dense. And so I wanted to take a different angle so that people who wouldn't necessarily go and study theology might have an opportunity to still learn about it in a different way, and that is by reading people's stories about how it changed their lives. And I personally had the theology of the body change my life, and so I wanted to be able to share the great teachings of John Paul II through the theology of the body with others, and so that's why I wrote the book.
That's really terrific, and there are plenty of anecdotes in there, and they deal with things as varied as pornography, same-sex attraction, abortion, sexuality in general, the priesthood, married life. Talk to us about some of the stories in the book and some of the people that have come forth to share their stories with you.
Well, I have to tell you, I read the stories and I'm humbled and amazed at some of the ways that the theology of the body is working in people's lives. And so every one of these stories, whether it was what you would consider a big conversion or small conversion, was a radical change for each individual. And we have the priests, as you mentioned, who have had their vocation being taken hold of, and marriages that have been healed, and young men and women who have struggled with same-sex attraction, and couples who have found a renewed sense of married life after years of marriage, and those people who have struggled with addictions to pornography and other problems. And so what happens is that the theology of the body starts to be effective in their lives, and a radical transformation and change of heart takes place in their lives in each one of these stories. And it could be as simple as I found out who I was through the theology of the body, and it really changed my understanding of who I am, and so I started to live my life differently, to I never knew who God was, and now I have a personal relationship to Him. So I think the theology of the body can be transformative in a myriad of ways.
And for those who don't know, if you could explain a little bit specifically about what the theology of the body is. What I can glean from having read your book is it seems to have the divine incorporated into the human body or spoken through the human body at a certain level. Am I kind of getting that a little bit right?
Yes, you're right on the right track. In its essence, what the theology of the body is that this is from John Paul II. He taught this at the beginning of his pontificate over the course of many years during Wednesday addresses, and it's been compiled into all of the addresses as a way for us to understand what our body's purpose. And a lot of times what happens with us as Catholics is we have this unconscious splitting of our body and soul. You might even find it in such good phrases as we want to save souls. Well, we don't just want to save souls, we want to save human persons, and the human person is a body and a soul, not just a soul. So a lot of times we forget about the importance of the body, and John Paul II wanted to bring it back out in this modern age where our bodies are so negated. They're thought of in such a negative way. And so the human body is really a way to reveal both who God is and who we are. And the reason why is because God built our bodies with a language that speaks about who we are and who God is. And so when we can discover what this language is, we can discover what it means to be human, to be made in the image and likeness of God, and how we relate as male and female. And so a lot of big questions can be answered, therefore, by the theology of the body and by understanding this at a deeper level.
Right, most certainly. And just because there is one other person, Christopher West, who is widely associated with the theology of the body, what do you make of the controversy surrounding his work?
Well, I got to tell you, I think there is a lot of people who are miscommunicating the issue. I think, in other words, I think there's two sides. A lot of people have made this into a camp of two sides, those who support Christopher West and those who don't. What I would say is that I think that there's some people on both sides who just aren't really listening and trying to understand, just trying to win a point. And then there's others who really are genuinely trying to help further the discussion about the theology of the body. I don't know if I would fall fully in either one of the sides. I think that both sides have something to learn from the other, and I think there needs to be a little bit better listening. But I will say this about Christopher West, and the Bible tells us you will know a tree by its fruit. And there are many, many people whose lives have been changed by Christopher's teaching of this topic. And the fact remains that most of us, were it not for Christopher West, would never have heard of the Theology of the Body. So we actually owe him a great debt by making it so popular in our church. But I think we still have a long way to go. And I think that we need to do more, less arguing and more understanding of what the problems that might come from the way in which we teach this subject, because it's still new to us, so we're still going to make errors. And Christopher, of course, has made some, but I think many others have as well.
Well, I know that your book, Marcel, certainly aims to make things a little bit clearer for people, and the anecdotes and the stories that are put forth in your book, Set Free to Love, certainly are very approachable and very readable, and it was entertaining as well as informative. So, Marcel Lejeune, thank you so much. We appreciate you joining us on Currents today.
Well, thank you for having me, and God bless.
All right, that's author Marcel Lejeune, and I've written a little bit more about the book and the theology of the body over on our blog. Just visit currentsny.net and click on Riding the Wave. Stay with us. We'll be right back. When we return, empowering people through education. It's the goal of a new effort underway in Brooklyn.
There are people in our backyards right here in Brooklyn and Queens who are struggling financially and could really benefit from what Teachers of Light has to offer.
When it comes to Catholic education, a big question is, how can we help those who cannot help themselves? As we heard earlier, Thomas Monaghan is using his considerable resources to help provide one answer to that question. But right here in Brooklyn, a new effort is being launched through the Office of Faith Formation to also serve the poor and those who are struggling to pay for education. It is called Teachers of Light. And last night we stopped by a meeting about this new initiative at Our Lady of Mount Carmel in Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Teachers of Light is an independent Catholic organization that has its blessing from the diocese, but it's separate from the diocese. And our mission really is to work with and educate the poor, both in terms of their religious education and formation, as well as their academics. And basically it's a way of dealing with the widespread concern financially. Parishes having a great deal of trouble affording faith formation ministers. Young people and families are having a great deal of trouble affording tutoring, but our ministry is to provide those things for free. And right now we do our work in the Diocese of Brooklyn and Queens.
We're very excited about being a site where the volunteers could come and work with some of the students in the area that really need the help with educational difficulties. I think there's a great need. Tutoring and those services are very, very expensive, and there's families that really can't afford it.
Whether it was students in kindergarten struggling with French or Spanish, or perhaps 12th graders who are hoping to take the SAT. We help young people with the tax exam who are trying to get into Catholic school. And then for struggling parishes, we offer religious education and faith formation experiences. It could be a day of prayer for catechists. It could be formation for catechists, adult faith formation. Many parishes, for example, can't hire a full-time religious education coordinator.
And I think the fact that it is a Catholic organization, and not that we're not necessarily going to preach to the children as we tutor them or teach them, but certainly we share our values and our faith as the people we are.
There's a famous story where a young woman came to India, and she wanted to volunteer and perhaps even become a missionary of charity and join Mother Teresa's order. And Mother Teresa, who's known for being quite discerning and able to see through people, and realized that perhaps coming to Calcutta was not the call of this woman. And so she very famously said to her, "You must find your own Calcutta." And what she meant by that was that you don't have to travel around the globe to find people who are in need of help. There are people in our backyards right here in Brooklyn and Queens who are struggling financially and could really benefit from what Teachers of Light has to offer. And so this is a way of us finding our own Calcutta right here in Brooklyn and Queens.
Certainly plenty of opportunities to give right around here. Well, that is it for tonight. Coming up tomorrow, like the show on the net tells us, Brooklyn is a city of churches, and there are a lot of sacred spaces to visit. We'll show you some of them right here. Meantime, remember, we are always online at currentsny.net, and you can also find us on Facebook and on Twitter. Until next time, I'm Francesca Maxime. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night.